I would say, seriously look at, and you can do this on the business side, on the personal side, take your credit card statements for the last 90 days and your bank account your statements where you have auto debits come out and look at all the charges coming out and try to ruthlessly defend them. Get with your accountant, CPA, or partner or spouse and say, you defend them and make sure you really need these.
Welcome to the How to Scale Commercial Real Estate Show. Whether you are an active or passive investor, we'll teach you how to scale your real estate investing business into something big.
Paul Neal is a serial entrepreneur that's owned 6 businesses in 30 years. He uses that wealth of real-world experience to help entrepreneurs and real estate investors win by funding their growth and dreams. Paul, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Sam. Happy to be here, man.
Hey, the pleasure's mine, Paul. There are 3 questions I ask every guest who comes on the show in 90 seconds or less. Can you tell me, where did you start? Where are you now? And how did you get there?
Well, it all started when I was in college. I got in my first business, was approached by my brother-in-law who's in marketing and thought, wow, I was studying engineering and didn't like it. He said, come work with me. We partnered up and had a real successful 10-year ride with that. How I got here now was just a series. It's really definitely not a straight line. Multiple businesses. I had some really successful ones. I had some massive failures. And, I find myself kind of back where I've always loved to be, and that is in real estate and business finance.
Wow. Okay. There's a lot to unpack there. A 10-year run. You guys launched a business a 10-year run's a pretty strong run for something that's like, hey, will you come work with me? What was that business?
Yeah, actually, honestly, that was a network marketing business. And so that was really my first exposure to entrepreneurship. I had always been sort of conditioned to be an engineer. I was just naturally pretty good at math and science. My father was an engineer. And I worked in the field a little bit when I was in school through co-op. And I sat in an 8x8 fluorescent lighted office 8 hours a day. And I remember the arguing with people for about 3 hours over the little rubber booties on the product we were developing, and thought at that point, I'm either going to slit my throat or do something else. And so he knew we had a good relationship, and he knew that I wanted something bigger, and he and my sister had been successful. And I thought, well, okay, I'll do something different with them.
Network marketing gets a really bad rap. People see that, they hear it, they're like, oh my gosh. But I think there are some valuable things probably that people learn when they go into network marketing. Would you agree with that? And if so, what were those things?
Oh, undoubtedly so. Yeah. I think the big takeaways are you have to have a vision and a dream of where you want to go. You have to face down your fears every day and just kind of put yourself out there, because, rejection is the name of the game, right? It's 99-1. And so you get really a thick skin. And I will say this, that, well, and another lesson, actually, my wife and I got to learn to work together, which was great. We've now just celebrated 31 years of marriage. So we survived that experience. But it was all about failing forward, and and the encouragement we got from the leadership over the years really inspired us to get, to become better and stronger. And so that helped us in the what I call the real world of business after the fact.
Yeah, absolutely. That's cool. Today you are back in real estate, business finance. I want to spend probably the bulk of our time, if you don't mind, really talking about where you see us economically in a cycle, how you're positioning yourself, and kind of where you're seeing opportunity, what people should be doing. I know it's a lot of things to unpack. So maybe we'll just start, where are we right now in your view, Paul?
Yeah. So great question, Sam. So, we've had a hot run in obviously residential real estate. The economy's expanded quite a bit. There's been, lots of evidence of inflation and talks of inflation. And, there's a lot of reasons for that. A lot of it's supply shock and, and how demand has shifted from products, goods and services when people were locked in their homes and ordering everything from Amazon, to now service shock, where people have gotten more than they need from Amazon. And so now they want to go back out to restaurants and bars, and they want to travel. As experience, I just got back from Florida. It took me an extra day to get home from Florida to Virginia, because, they're short-staffed everywhere with the airlines, because people are just traveling en masse, among other reasons. And so The Fed is aggressively moving to try to put the brakes on inflation. They've bumped the prime rate 75 basis points twice. They'll probably do it again come September. And most people think that's a bad thing. The news talks about, the media talks about the Fed hitting the prime rate. Rates are going up. The world's going to end. The reality is, as they do that, they're attempting to put the brakes on inflation. We're starting to see that ease, and I think we're going to see it ease quite a bit into the fourth quarter. And so the long end of the yield curve starts to come down. So longer interest rates start to ease. We saw an increase on the 10-year note. It went from right at about 1% in December to peaked in June, right before the Fed hit hit the gas pedal the first time, and it had peaked at like 3.5%. Well, it's since retraced all the way down to, it's battling right around 2.7 now. So, people talk about inverted yield curve and so forth. So that's a signal that we're moving into recession. I will tell you this, though. The other interesting thing is normally when we go into recession, you see a major upturn in unemployment. We have not seen that. And, there's a lot of, people scratching their head, from COVID taking a lot of the upper end workers that could retire out of the workforce early that didn't come back to, I think I heard the other day, there may be 3 million in that neighborhood, people who have perhaps have long COVID. And so they're not coming back in the workforce either. So they were affected kind of adversely. So for whatever it is, we're not seeing unemployment really turn up sharply. So that's interesting. But I'll tell you this, I think really the key is to position yourself right now. That's what we're looking to do, in the event of an economic slowdown, because that always brings tremendous opportunity.
When you say that, what comes to mind? Like, what are some action items? If you said to me, hey, Sam, today, here are 3 things or 2 things, whatever comes to mind that you should be doing right now to position yourself.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I'll keep it really simple. I think 3 things. The first thing would be, hey, 80-20 your expenses. We talk about the 80-20 principle, Pareto's principle. 20% of your expenses you probably need, and 80% of them are probably fluff. I would say, seriously look at, and you can do this on the business side, on the personal side, take your credit card statements for the last 90 days and your bank account your statements where you have auto debits come out, and look at all the charges coming out and try to ruthlessly defend them. Get with your accountant, CPA, or partner or spouse and say, you defend them and make sure you really need these. I don't know about you, but, many times I end up signing up for some service that, 4 months later, I forgot I signed up for and don't use, but yet they're tapping my credit card, right? So how many of those do we have, right? So
I don't know what you're talking about, Paul.
Yeah, no, it never happens, right? So 80-20, and including a couple of sort of out of the box, maybe you need to look at your staff. Do you have anybody that's, low producing? They're not effective. Maybe now's the time to trim some fat, or how about this? Maybe buy out a partner if you're an entrepreneur or a business owner. Maybe they're getting close to retirement. Maybe they don't want to go through a recession. Maybe this is a good opportunity, right? Second thing I would say, shore up that balance sheet. Look at your debt. Is there anywhere you can? I would say pay off, but my next point is going to sort of preclude that. I would say, can you extend your terms anywhere? Can you consolidate? Can you get better rates in terms of what you currently have? Do you have some assets on there that aren't performing that maybe you could turn into cash? Maybe a property you could sell that's not performing like you'd like it to do, or just some, I don't know, maybe you've got a car laying around that's not, you just don't really need. Turn it into cash. It's a great time to do that. Which brings me to my third point, and that is really focus on cash. Get some dry powder. Opportunities are going to come. I think it was Warren Buffett who said, be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful, right? So this is when most wealth is created, I believe, in a downturn, not in an upcycle. Things go on sale, properties go on sale, businesses go on sale. So from a cash standpoint, get a line of credit if you need it. Look at your AR, accounts receivable. I see so many businesses that, they take forever to get their money in the door. There's ways you can improve that. Aggressive follow-up, getting deposits up front, maybe factoring. Different ways to do that, but really focus on cash for those opportunities, that come up, that will inevitably come to he who's ready for that.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. And I know people are going to laugh at me and say, well, gee, Sam, why didn't you do this a year and a half ago? But I've had no debt even on my primary residence for ever. And I'm looking at it right now and I go, gosh, if I'm going to start stacking cash for an opportunity. So yeah, I'm looking at getting debt on my primary, which is one of those things. It's kind of, everybody's got their own view on what you should or shouldn't do in that respect, but it's one of those things just in line with that, stacking cash. How do you, on that comment though, if you're stacking cash, how do you protect that from the effects of inflation? I've got some business accounts and things myself that have been, it's idle and it's not a small sum of idle capital. But what do you recommend in that regard? So, hey, we're stacking cash, but what do we do with it in the meantime?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. And I'll be the first to say I'm not an expert there, but I would say, know your area. I would say that, there, who is it that said, I forget, somebody famous said, I'm more concerned about the return of my investment than the return on my investment. And so I think in times of transition and turmoil, because I think we're in that state right now, nobody really knows what's going to happen. Preservation of cash versus, deployment of cash might be in the short term, the more poignant question in my mind. I know it's a conservative approach. I tend there after having a business blow up in 2008, a business that was a multi-million-dollar business positioned to sell, and then liquidity went to zero. I had not expected that. I knew we were going to have a slowdown, didn't know. So you just don't know. And so again, I would say safe, liquid, and readily available, and then reevaluate that in 90 days. The world's going to look different in, I believe, October, November than it does today. And again, I think we'll have a little more sense of stability. We've got a midterm election coming up. There's a lot of things going on. So the plates, it's going to look different at that point.
What would you say to somebody maybe that isn't in that position where they can liquidate assets or they can shore up balance sheets or even go out, maybe even their expenses are pretty low? Let's say they're just getting started, right? And maybe again, they don't have that capital to necessarily stack quickly. What do you say to that person right now? How can they position themselves to win in a recession?
Well, I mean, I think obviously, point number one of really seriously looking at your expenses, I think that you need to look at allocating some savings. I mean, you've got money coming in right now. I think that's critical to get in the habit of savings. And then I think you should really align yourself with people that are a few steps down the road ahead of you. That have been there, because we all started. Well, I don't say we all started with nothing. I didn't inherit any money. I wasn't fortunate enough to have a famous last name. So if you're not in that camp like I wasn't, then align yourself with people that are down the road ahead of you, particularly in real estate investing. There are a lot of people you can follow. Obviously, Sam is a great one, and learn from them. And then you can start looking at building and assembling a team. Really the key is the idea, not the capital. And if you can come up with the ideas, and you will, if you immerse yourself with the right people, then the capital will show up. You will have opportunities. It may not be to buy a 30-unit apartment building day one, but not everybody starts there.
Absolutely. Let's talk about that for a minute. What are you said today you are involved in real estate and business finance. Where are you seeing opportunity right now in real estate?
Yeah. So, we see a lot of new construction on the investor side. We have quite a few builders that we finance, and their inventory is super low on the residential side. Depending on where you are in the country. I mean, if you're in a New York City or California, you're probably not going to have high demand. But if you're in the Southeast or where people want to move to, there's a lot of demand and there's just not a lot of supply, and that's not going to slow down. I mean, you have the 40% of the mortgages on residential real estate are below 3%. So people in those homes aren't going to sell. That inventory is not coming on the market unless they're just forced to move. You have a large percentage of them are actually paid off. You have the largest cadre of demographic population coming into the I'm now ready to buy a home for the first time, the millennials, that they want to move out of the apartment. A lot of them are working hybrid work schedules, so they want some more room. They're moving out of the cities. They want homes, and they just aren't out there. So I think single family, if you can get that, is great just from the demand. I have a lot of entrepreneurs, because I find a lot of real estate investors are also business owners, entrepreneurs, and professionals, doctors, veterinarians, that sort of thing. Those that haven't are looking to buy the buildings they're in. The buildings aren't cheap, but what a great investment there from a commercial standpoint. They lease out part of the building. It helps defer some of the costs. There's a lot of tax advantages there. I have a client, good friend of mine. She's an OBGYN. She had a practice, bought her building about 13 years ago. Anyways, looking to retire in the next couple of years, has paid the building off. She was just recently acquired by one of these larger medical groups. And they're not only paying her to buy the business, they're paying her a salary for a few more years, but they're going to rent the building back for her for $9,000 to $10,000 a month of cash flow for just what a retirement cash flow, right?
That's amazing. Absolutely love that. Yeah, it's stuff like that makes a lot of sense. Let's talk about business finance. What are some things you're involved in right now? I guess on the business finance, if you don't mind talking about that,
yeah, sure.
Finance side of things that you say, hey, these are unique areas where I see opportunity. And I guess specifically inside of that, what type of businesses do you see that are, I guess, inflation and recession resistant?
I think service businesses are inflation and recession resistant. I mean, you've got to have you look at lawn care, for instance, but any business where it demands someone to come do something for you, those are in high demand. They're always in demand, right? You can't Amazon those, right? You can't shut that out of, or offshore that. That's always a safe investment. We see a lot right now. We do a lot of business acquisition funding, and we see a lot of partner buyouts. And you have a lot of businesses that are well established that the principals are aging out. They've done it. They've been there, done that. They've got the T-shirt, and they're like, they want to sell. And a lot of times it's to maybe a junior, it's a family member or someone in the in the company. But not always. There's a lot of turnover. I mean, all these baby boomers are looking to retire. So I think that's a great opportunity. I have a young client. He's probably not 30 yet, and he's in the gourmet popcorn business. And so I know it's kind of funny, right? But he has a very successful gourmet popcorn retail establishment, and he's acquiring other established. That's his business plan. So as he adds additional popcorn businesses to his portfolio, he's growing his cash flow and his balance sheet, and he's been really successful at that. So there's a lot of opportunity out there.
What are risks, I guess, that you are actively avoiding when you look at business acquisition? If somebody comes to you and they're looking for acquisition funding, what are some things that are just red flags that you go, thanks for the call, but no?
Yeah. So startups. We don't do startups. Startups are usually risky. We want to see businesses that are cash flowing well. We want to see, if you want to buy a business, we want to see that you have the ability to manage and grow the business. So some sort of experience. It doesn't have to be necessarily directly in that business, but you have to have some relevant management business experience that can transfer over. Because the last thing we want for you or for us is for you to acquire the business and then, to fail, a year to 2 years later because you just didn't know what you were getting into. We try to stay out of the sort of risky industries, your vice industries, things like that. Although they can be hugely profitable, just not our area. But you'd be amazed at the calls we get. So, so I'd say really it's basically cash flow is the key things, what's the history of the business, and, if you're doing the acquiring, do you have experience? And a lot of times it's a business that's already in that field and they're just expanding their operations through little mergers and acquisitions. They're picking up a $2 million, branch here, $1 million branch over here, that sort of thing. And that again can be a super effective way to grow, particularly in a recession when you also may have a competitor that may not be as systematically effective as you. It doesn't have the systems and the processes, and you've kind of nailed it, and you can acquire them and turn that around. So their cash flow may not have to be as strong if you have the demonstrated ability to do that.
Right. No, that's absolutely true. I love that idea of expansion in a time of recession, or in when everybody else is contracting. I think that's a great time to go out and take market share, and I think that's really, really great there. Tell me this, if you rewound the tape, you look back at your last 20 or 30-year career, what is one thing that you feel like you've done very well that other people should emulate? And what is one thing maybe you'd say, hey, here's a pitfall that somebody can avoid?
That's a great question. I think doing well, I think I've chosen, I try to make long-term choices, like my wife as a long-term choice, for instance. And I chose well there. I don't know how that happened. God was good to me. And whenever I've approached a business, I've always tried to, go along with it and look beyond, day one, and have always been willing to put money in, even when I didn't have it, realizing that, I couldn't do everything myself. And the bad decisions are the times where I felt like I could do it all myself, and to be the jack of all trades and then the master of none. And so the guy who's building the business is also cutting the grass, so to speak, and that just it didn't work. And it was because I thought, well, A, I can do it, and B, we can save a few bucks on the ramp up or whatever. And inevitably, it was just a bad decision. It would cost me time and ultimately a lot of money.
Right. Yeah. It's the it's the time to market. It's the ramp up speed. It's the getting in your own way. It's the you're the bottleneck. And I think many of us, myself included, I'm constantly reviewing things like that, where it's like, why am I? This is I am in my own way right here.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, that brings me to another point. It's like, so I've had a business coach for on and off, but mostly on for the last 20 years. Wow. And I'm actually a certified business coach. I went through the process and had a few clients really just to sharpen my own axe. I don't actively do it today, but we all need somebody who can look over our shoulder and say, ask that question like, hey, why are you doing that? Defend that for me, And I'm like, I really can't defend that for you,
Right. And that goes back to your credit card statement, defending those expenses, where it's like, whatever it is, like, okay, yeah, I probably can't. So maybe you should cut it out.
Right. Probably don't need it.
Probably don't need it. Man, that's awesome. Paul, thank you for taking the time to come on the show today and really just kind of give us your history of business, how to position ourselves to win in a time of recession, kind of your thoughts here on the market. You've given us 3 very easy to follow steps on things that we should be doing right now to be ready for a downturn, and how to increase our market share in a time of recession. Certainly appreciate your insights on where you're seeing opportunity in the real estate space and also in the business side of things. It was great having you on the show today. If our listeners want to get in touch with you or learn more about you, what is the best way to do that?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. So I've set up a free resource. I put together the key questions that you've got to ask and answer before you seek funding. I think this is a really awesome guidebook to kind of help you think through the process to make sure that you really have to ask a lot of questions. It's a serious consideration when you look for funding of any type. You can find that we're spinning up a special page just for this, just for your listeners. It's my website, VPC Victor Paul Charlie .capital. That's VPC Victor Paul Charlie .capital /podcast with a hyphen or a dash, scale CRE.
Fantastic. We will make sure we put that in the show notes there, vpc.capital /podcast-scale CRE. And that link, of course, will be there in the podcast or in the show notes. Appreciate that. That's something I'm actually, when we hang up here, Paul, I'm going to go download myself because I'm really curious what's inside it. So thank you again for providing that for us and our listeners. And thank you again for coming on the show today. Certainly appreciate it.
Sam, it was a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. I certainly enjoyed it.